All right, here we go. Stocks by the numbers. Welcome back. Another quick tech update here. We wanted to look at SMCI, Supermicro Computer, listed here on the NASDAQ, 2866, down over 4.5 points, 14% drop on this NVIDIA news. In my opinion, I still say this is a massive overreaction. SMCI should not be seeing this drop. They cited immense increase in demand, and they mentioned multiple other businesses that they're working with. Everyone thinks that they are strictly tied to NVIDIA, and that's why it makes me laugh. But you can see Oracle Supermicro pummeled en route of AI infrastructure stocks. NVIDIA, of course, facing risk, Chinese AI firm. And, this is just unfortunately part of the game. And in my opinion, I just did the video on NVIDIA. In my opinion, NVIDIA drop is justified. SMCI drop not justified, in my opinion. I'm reading. Buying chips, reading. Yep. Maintain the buy at Loop Capital. We looked at this. Oh no, I may have mentioned this in the Discord. Loop Capital raises price target from 35 to 40. They're being ultra conservative. Maintains buy rating. I think we looked at the stock actually just a couple of days ago. But I know people were concerned about the overall tech drop, and I know there are a lot of eyes on SMCI, so I just figured I'd do a quick update and I'd re-mention some of these trend lines here. And this is why, even here, when it just dropped to about 30, you can see 29.90, and people tried to comment when I was talking about this trend line here. Let's see if we drop to about 27.80, $28 a share, and people were like, oh, it just dipped to sub 30. No, this wasn't what I was looking for. And you can see another big drop took place about 2 weeks ago down here to this blue trend line at 29.01. We climb up. We ended up obviously rejecting, and on today's news we dropped down, and you can see 28.68. So this was the drop that I was personally looking for. And I personally bought a few more shares of SMCI. Unfortunately, I just don't have the liquidity like some of you do, but you already know how I feel about this stock. And we can see that if we zoom in and look at this trend line here, if it does drop straight down today, you're looking at about 28, maybe potentially like 27.98. So looking to hold that $28 level. However, it could break, of course, and drop back down to this fib here of about 26.75 and meet up with this blue trend line that we were recently above and starting to gain momentum off of. And now, of course, we have the news today. But technically, there really isn't much news on SMCI. It's just moving with NVIDIA because, again, they try to connect all of these companies almost into one big move. And that's why I just said in my NVIDIA update, and I'll say it again in this SMCI update. In my opinion, the drops in stocks like AMD and SMCI could be viewed as a big opportunity to potentially average down or begin building a position in what I feel could be good growth stocks over the next 2, 3, 5 years. But of course, you can buy them at big discounts. But technically, this is the line you want to keep an eye on, in my eyes, about 27.98, again, about $28 a share, and we'll see if it breaks that maybe over the next day or two. But in my opinion, again, I technically did not receive any deterring news from SMCI, so my $200 long-term price target is still currently maintained. Again, that's just my opinion. You can see the MACD dropped right down and met up with the line. Doesn't look like it crossed though, so we could potentially bounce here. In my opinion, SMCI would bounce back before NVIDIA would bounce back, but we'll see what happens. 50-day moving average 32.72. We were holding above that for several days, and now of course we have our drop here. So got to look at that 28 trend line to the downside, but of course we can look at the 32 plus moving average to the upside. RSI sitting here at 40. That's why, again, we could potentially drop it down to that 30 benchmark, which of course would drop the stock down to 28, slight sub 28, and then you could potentially get the bounce. You can see on the weekly, the RSI 40.5, right? And last time we hit that 30 mark, that's when the news came out that they submitted the plan to maintain their listing on the NASDAQ, and the stock spiked right back up to almost 50. So in my opinion, again, that really is, I feel, where the stock should be. And that was around the time of this Hindenburg report as well, which we spoke about recently. Stock was sitting at like 45 and change. And then the Hindenburg report just continued to beat the stock down. And now we find out that they might have been colluding with hedge funds to bash one stock to have someone else take a position. Basically, it's one of the theories that I floated when I first heard the Hindenburg news, and now it's come to fruition. So that's why I said, in my opinion, wherever SMCI was when that report came out, that's in theory where the stock should get back to. So that's why I still say, in my opinion, it might go down before it goes up, but SMCI really should be between $45 and $50 a share right now, in my opinion. 200-day moving average sitting here exactly at 24 3/4. Of course, you could have a breakdown to there. And if we look, 24 3/4 would be like there over the next couple of days, which could potentially drop us down to this trend line here. Let me see. 21 and change. That would be too much of an overreaction in my opinion. But was it 24.75? I mean, we could break this and then ride down this blue trend line here. Let me extend it a little bit so you see what I'm talking about. See how we can come down to like 28 and then maybe bounce, but then we can break, come back up, reject, drop back down. See how we're at like 25. See, we're in like the mid-low 24s here, and then we can potentially bounce up. Unfortunately, again, a lot of these stocks have minds of their own, but in my opinion, I have to stick to my analysis. I do. And a lot of you, may think I'm crazy, but as I always say, my success rate is pretty damn high, and the wins speak for themselves and significantly outweigh the losses. So, if I'm wrong here or there, it is what it is. It's part of the path I chose. But also at the end of the day, if my analysis proves correct more times than not, then just because it's trending or just because someone online disagrees with me doesn't mean that I'm personally going to change the way that I do it. So that's why, again, until I hear other news on SMCI, my analysis stands. Market cap sub 17 billion with a PE here of sub 17, beating on EPS 3 of the last 4 quarters. Look at the growth in revenue, up to over 5 billion as of last quarter. Earnings due out supposedly around the first week of February. We're looking for 61 1/3 cents a share on revenue of 5.77 billion. But people are more worried about the deadline with the NASDAQ, which is February 25th. So those are a couple of dates to keep in mind. But in my opinion, again, if we want to flash crash below this line and even test this blue line here, we should, in theory, bounce 2-3 days before going into these earnings on anticipation of the numbers. So hopefully we get some life back in SMCI. Let's check the pivot points real quick. I'll let you go. We can see last year's pivot point on the weekly is just slightly below the 200-day moving average here. Let me see what it is out of curiosity. Oh, that's down 23.70 and change, high 23s. So again, we could potentially see the drop and the ride of this blue trend line. But again, it really shouldn't. It really shouldn't. It really should. I mean, if it wants to drop here, it should. And then it should bounce again the couple of days going into the earnings. But it's just unfortunate because, as I said with NVDA, we took it too high too quick. So now if we're going to sell that stock off for the next 30 days, 60 straight days, then yes, unfortunately, probably the SMCIs and the AMDs are going to follow suit. Whether we think as a business they should as well. Next support support pivot point, support level, excuse me, on SMCI here on the daily, 24.29. So we have to keep an eye on that MACD as well and see what happens tomorrow if we drop it down again and cross to the downside and accelerate that sell-off. But I do think a bounce back to the moving average, 32.72, really should happen. And we should really see 36 going into earnings, but they might wait for after earnings. I don't know. Only time will tell. I said time and time again, it is much more difficult to time a lot of these stocks in a fake, overpumped market. I said it time and time and time again. But we have a lot of action down here in the 24s, so that might be where the stock wants to go and retest before we bounce. But we can see here on the weekly, if we bounce and run to the next pivot point here to the upside, you can see it's almost $58 with the 50-day moving average sitting here in the high 61s. So, again, I still say we have a lot of potential here in SMCI, and until I see or hear that, revenue all of a sudden misses by 30%, or now they don't have demand anymore, they lower guidance, or of course, if they don't regain compliance and they get delisted, obviously all of those things would really beat up the stock and would probably change my personal analysis on the situation. But until that actually comes to light, I stand by my analysis. But again, this is just my opinion. If you agree or disagree, let us know down in the comments section. And if you're buying this dip, or if you're adding again, let us know down in the comments section. But that's pretty much it. I'll end it there. Once again, Stocks by the Numbers, I want to thank you for stopping by. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop it down in the comments section. I'm usually pretty quick to reply. Thumbs up algorithm helps me get more eyes on the channel. And of course, subscribe to the channel. That is our handshake agreement. That is how you help me help you. But more importantly, moving forward, like I always say, I understand that markets are rocky, they're volatile, and they are very uncertain. So I want to wish all of you success. I hope everyone makes a couple of dollars. Thank you for your time. Have a good day.